Welcome to AI Book Highlights.
Yeah, great to be here.
Today we're looking at Rene Girard's Mimetic Theory. This isn't just abstract philosophy, it's really about us.
Mm-hmm. It digs into why we want things, why we end up in conflict, and even how societies, function or sometimes break down.
Yes, some really surprising insights into human behavior here.
Definitely. So we'll pull out 5 key highlights from Girard's thinking.
And then we'll try to nail down 3 actionable takeaways, things you can actually use to maybe understand the world or even yourself
Yeah.
a little better.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so highlight number 1. This is fundamental Girard, imitation or mimesis.
Right. He really challenges that romantic idea that our desires just spring up from nowhere, totally original to us.
He says, nope, not really. We desire what other people desire. It's learned, it's copied.
Exactly. And it's not just like superficial copying. He sees it as reflecting something deep about us, that we're open to others, that we're fundamentally social beings. We aren't intrinsically complete.
Which really flies in the face of, say, Descartes' I think, therefore I am, right? That focus on the individual mind.
Totally. Girard finds that whole turn towards radical individualism a bit of a, well, he calls it a romantic lie. It ignores how much we're shaped by looking at each other.
He even connects it back to Plato, doesn't he? This idea of an ontology of imitation.
Yeah, Plato saw imitation as key to how we learn and understand, especially in like religious devotion, imitating the divine or the ideal.
But Plato also warned about it.
He did. He cautioned against directing that same kind of imitative reverence towards other humans because that's where envy and conflict can start brewing. Imitate the gods, maybe, but be careful imitating your neighbor.
Okay, so if we're all imitating each other's desires, what happens next? That leads right into highlight 2, mimetic rivalry.
This is crucial. Girard argues the main source of violence isn't some innate aggression like a built-in fight instinct. It's this mimetic process itself. We become rivals with the very people we imitate, the ones who become models for our desires.
So I want the promotion because she wants the promotion and suddenly we're rivals.
Pretty much. The desire itself creates the conflict. But what's interesting and maybe hopeful is that Girard doesn't see this as inevitable.
Yeah.
He points to figures like Jesus, especially in the Sermon on the Mount, calling for nonviolence as proof that we can overcome this cycle. Violence isn't our inescapable destiny.
He makes a distinction here too, doesn't he, between different kinds of models.
Yes, external versus internal mediation. External is when your model is distant, sort of out of reach, like Don Quixote admiring the fictional knight Amadis. There's no real competition possible there.
Okay.
Internal mediation is when the model is right there in your world, maybe your friend, your colleague, your neighbor. Think of characters in Stendhal or Proust, tangled up in these close quarters rivalries.
And that internal kind. That's where the trouble really starts.
That's where it gets intense. And here's a real Girardian twist. He suggests that modern society, with its emphasis on equality, actually increases this internal rivalry.
Wait, equality increases rivalry?
Well, if social barriers break down, and theoretically anyone can desire anything or achieve anything, suddenly everyone around you is a potential model and a potential rival. It paradoxically fuels more social friction, more competition.
Wow, okay. So mimetic desire leads to rivalry, which leads to conflict. How does society cope? Highlight 3, the scapegoat mechanism.
Right. When mimetic rivalries spiral out of control and social chaos looms, Girard says societies often stumble upon a pretty grim solution.
Which is?
Collective violence gets channeled onto a single, often arbitrary victim, a scapegoat. This individual or group is suddenly seen unanimously as the cause of all the problems.
And killing or expelling them brings peace.
A temporary, often illusory peace. The unanimity of the violence creates a sense of renewed community, but it's built on a lie, on the victim's presumed guilt.
Are there examples of this in literature?
Oh, definitely. The book mentions a story by Kleist about an earthquake where social order just collapses and people desperately seek someone to blame.
And Lord of the Flies too, right? With Simon.
Exactly. The boys are lost in this collective delirium, this mimetic frenzy of fear, and they mistake Simon for the beast and kill him. It's a classic scapegoating scenario.
What conditions make this more likely?
Girard points to the collapse of social differences. When hierarchies break down, when everyone starts seeming the same, that's when mimetic contagion, the spread of rivalry and violence, can really take off.
So ironically, stable hierarchies might actually contain conflict initially.
To some extent, yes, by restricting who you can imitate or desire things from keeping mediation external, like in Shakespeare's Troilus and Cressida, before everything falls apart.
But the key is that the narrative always blames the victim.
Almost always, especially in myth. The perspective of the persecutors dominates, and the victim's innocence is completely obscured. They have to be guilty for the mechanism to work.
Which leads beautifully into highlight 4, how the Bible starts to unravel this.
Yes, this is a massive part of Girard's argument. He sees the Bible, particularly read through the lens of the Gospels, as fundamentally different from myth precisely because it starts to reveal the victim's perspective.
It pulls back the curtain on the scapegoat mechanism.
It does. Think of the binding of Isaac in Genesis. You expect a human sacrifice, which was common then, but God intervenes. It marks a shift away from sacralized violence against an innocent.
And Cain and Abel versus Romulus and Remus?
Perfect contrast. Both stories involve founding murder, brother killing brother, but the Roman myth sides with Romulus, the murderer-founder. The Bible sides with Abel, the victim. It remembers the violence from the victim's standpoint.
How about Job?
Job is huge for Girard. Here you have a man who is afflicted, and his whole community, his friends, insist he must have done something wrong. They're trying to make him fit the scapegoat pattern.
But he refuses.
He insists on his innocence, challenging that unanimous accusation. He disrupts the neat blame the victim narrative.
And the New Testament.
Girard sees it as the ultimate unveiling. Take the story of the woman caught in adultery. The crowd is ready, stones in hand, for a collective, justified killing. But Jesus stops it. His line, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone," introduces a kind of non-violent contagion. It breaks the mimetic cycle of accusation and violence. It exposes the mechanism.
Okay, fascinating. So, highlight 5. What about mimesis and modernity? Where does this leave us now?
Well, it's kind of ironic. Modern society officially rejects imitation, right? We value originality, authenticity, being unique.
Yeah, be yourself is the mantra.
But Girard argues this very rejection is itself a product of intensified mimetic desire. Because everyone else is also trying to be original, we end up imitating each other's desire for originality, often by defining ourselves against others.
So the model becomes an anti-model. I want to be original, so I'll do the opposite of what they're doing.
Exactly. The admired figure can quickly flip into someone you react against. But the underlying mimetic dynamic, that looking to others to figure out who to be or what to want, is still powerfully there, maybe even more powerfully, because it's hidden.
Girard gets pretty provocative here, talking about the Antichrist.
He does. He speculates that the modern era, with its history of persecutions carried out in the name of fighting persecution, or ideologies that claim to bring ultimate peace through massive violence, might inadvertently embody a kind of parodistic imitation of Christ's message. A distortion.
Wow. So how do we actually break these cycles of rivalry then?
Girard suggests the truly radical way is often counterintuitive. It involves something like surrendering the object of desire to the rival, or refusing to play the game of escalation. Yielding.
Like turning the other cheek.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
It disrupts the expected pattern. The rival expects resistance, escalation. When you offer non-resistance or even generosity, it can break the mimetic lockstep.
Okay, that's a lot to chew on. Let's shift to the takeaways. How can we apply this? Takeaway number 1.
Recognize mimetic desire in your own life. Seriously, pay attention. When you want something, a job, a possession, a certain lifestyle, pause and ask yourself, how much of this is truly my desire and how much is influenced by seeing others value it or want it?
So identifying the models in our lives.
Yeah. And notice feelings like envy or intense competitiveness. Could they be signals that you're caught in a mimetic rivalry, maybe wanting what someone else has or simply wanting to be like them in some way?
And just recognizing that gives you more agency?
It can. It allows you to make more conscious choices about what you pursue, based perhaps on deeper values rather than just, keeping up with the Joneses.
All right. Takeaway number 2.
Be aware of scapegoating dynamics. Look around in your workplace, your community, online, in the news. When things go wrong or there's a crisis, is there a tendency to quickly find one person or group to blame for everything?
The easy target.
The easy target. Question that unanimity. Is the perspective of the accused actually being heard? Is the explanation maybe more complex than just it's all their fault?
So resist the urge to pile on.
Exactly. Understanding the mechanism helps you step back, resist the contagious pull of collective blame, and maybe push for more nuanced understanding instead of easy answers.
Okay, makes sense. And the third takeaway?
Consider the power of non-retaliation, or maybe non-escalation. Girard's work suggests that breaking cycles of rivalry often requires doing the unexpected.
Not fighting fire with fire.
Right. Reflect on situations where your gut reaction might be to get defensive, to compete harder. to strike back? Could a different response, yielding on a small point, refusing to engage in kind, showing unexpected generosity, actually de-escalate things?
About challenging.
It definitely is. It goes against our mimetic instincts sometimes. But consciously choosing a non-violent or non-escalatory path can be surprisingly powerful in disrupting those ingrained patterns of conflict. It's about breaking the reciprocal nature of the rivalry.
Okay, so recognize your own mimetic desires, watch out for scapegoating, and consider non-retaliation. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, René Girard's ideas, they really do offer this this different lens for looking at everything from why you want a particular brand of coffee to, major geopolitical conflicts.
It feels like one of those theories that once you grasp it, you start seeing it everywhere.
Absolutely. It can spark quite a few aha moments.
We really hope this overview has sparked some of those for you, the learner. If you're intrigued and want to go deeper into Girard's really complex and fascinating work,
which we highly recommend,
then definitely pick up Rene Girard's Mimetic Theory. We put a link in the description to make it easy for you.
It's well worth a read.
Thank you so much for joining us on AI Book Highlights.